Behind the catchphrases and dance moves of this groundbreaking sitcom lies a treasure trove of bizarre secrets. A star who legally changed his name to match his character, a tragic car accident that nearly ended the show, cast walkouts that left one actor to carry entire episodes alone, and a famous bootlegging storyline that taught America about concert piracy. From Soul Train dancers to million-dollar lawsuits, these shocking revelations will forever change how you see Roger, Rerun, and the gang. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about What's Happening. Fact 1. Fred Berry legally changed his name to Rerun. Most actors try to distance themselves from their most famous roles, but Fred Berry took the opposite approach in a way that shocked even his closest friends and family. The man who brought the lovable dancing character Freddie Rerun Stubbs to life on What's Happening was so deeply connected to his on-screen persona that he made an extraordinary legal decision that would follow him for the rest of his life. Fred Berry was born Fred Allen Berry on March 19, 1951, in St. Louis, Missouri, with Allen serving as his perfectly normal middle name. But after What's Happening became a hit, and Rerun became a household name across America, something unexpected happened to the actor behind the character. Everywhere he went, people called him Rerun instead of Fred, and the nickname stuck so completely that it began to feel more like his real identity than his birth name ever had. Rather than fight this association or try to establish himself as Fred Berry, the serious actor, Berry embraced it in the most dramatic way possible. He went to court and legally changed his middle name from Allen to Rerun, making his official legal name Fred Rerun Berry. This wasn't just a stage name or a publicity stunt, it was a permanent alteration to his government documents, driver's license, and every official record that bore his name. The decision reflected how completely Berry had merged with his television character, but it also showed his genuine affection for the role that had made him famous. Even decades after What's Happening ended, Berry continued to make public appearances as Rerun, wearing the character's signature red beret and rainbow suspenders. He never seemed to regret the name change, often telling interviewers that he loved being called Rerun because it reminded him of the joy the character brought to people. This legal name change meant that for the rest of his life, every contract, every marriage certificate, and every piece of official paperwork would forever link Fred Berry to the cheerful, dancing teenager from Watts who had captured America's heart in the 1970s. Fact 2. The show started because ABC hated the original pilot. What's Happening only existed because television executives completely rejected the first version of the show, forcing the creators to start over from scratch with an entirely different approach. The beloved sitcom that millions of fans remember actually began as a much more serious drama that bore little resemblance to the lighthearted comedy that eventually made it to air. The original concept came from Eric Monti, who had written the 1975 film Cooley High, a coming-of-age story about teenagers growing up in Chicago's housing projects. Monti's movie had been a major success, so ABC network executives were eager to turn it into a television series that could capture the same authentic feel and dramatic storytelling that had made the film so popular with audiences. The network commissioned Toy Productions, led by producer Bud Yorkin, to create a direct television adaptation of Cooley High that would follow the same characters and maintain the movie's more serious tone. The pilot episode they produced stayed faithful to the film's dramatic approach, focusing on the realistic struggles and challenges faced by young people living in urban America during the 1970s. However, when ABC executives watched the completed pilot, they were deeply disappointed with what they saw. The show felt too heavy and dramatic for their vision of primetime television, and they worried that audiences wouldn't connect with the serious subject matter in a weekly series format. Fred Silverman, who was ABC's head of programming at the time, made the decision to reject the pilot entirely rather than try to fix it with minor changes. Instead of canceling the project completely, Silverman gave Toy Productions an unusual second chance, but with strict conditions. He told them to completely reimagine the show as a traditional family sitcom with new characters, a lighter tone, and a different title that wouldn't remind viewers of the original Cooley High movie. This dramatic shift in direction forced the creators to abandon their faithful adaptation and instead create something entirely new that would eventually become the "What's Happening" that fans grew to love. Fact 3. The first episode aired wasn't actually the first episode filmed. Television audiences who tuned in for the very first episode of What's Happening on August 5, 1976, were actually watching the second episode that the cast and crew had filmed, thanks to a last-minute decision by network executives who wanted to showcase Fred Berry's remarkable dancing abilities right from the start. The confusion began during the show's initial production schedule in early 1976, when the creators filmed what they intended to be the series premiere, an episode called The Birthday Present. This pilot episode was videotaped in front of a live audience at ABC Television Studios in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles on March 16, 1976, and was designed to introduce viewers to the main characters and establish the show's basic premise about three teenage friends living in the Watts neighborhood. However, when the production team filmed their second episode, titled The Runaway, they realized they had captured something special that wasn't present in the original pilot. This second episode featured a brief but memorable scene where Fred Berry's character, Rerun, showed off his incredible dance moves, giving viewers their first real taste of the performer's extraordinary talents that had made him famous as a member of the professional dance group The Lockers. ABC executives watched both completed episodes and made the strategic decision to switch their order, promoting The Runaway to serve as the series premiere instead of The Birthday Present. They recognized that Fred Berry's dancing scene would immediately grab viewers' attention and give them a better sense of what made the show unique compared to other sitcoms on television at the time. This decision proved to be brilliant marketing, as Berry's dancing became one of the show's most beloved elements throughout its three-season run. The original pilot episode, The Birthday Present, eventually aired later in the series, but by then most viewers had no idea they were watching what was actually supposed to be the very first episode of What's Happening. The switch demonstrated how important Fred Berry's performance skills were to the show's identity, even before the series had officially launched. Fact 4. Rerun was originally written for a skinny white actor. The character that would become Freddie Rerun Stubbs was never supposed to be played by Fred Berry, and the show's producers initially fought against his casting because he was completely different from what they had envisioned for the role. When the writers first created the character, they had written him as a thin, white teenager who would serve as comic relief through his awkward attempts to fit in with his cooler friends. The original concept for this third member of the friend group was based on the classic television trope of the skinny, nerdy sidekick who would get laughs through his physical clumsiness rather than his larger-than-life personality. The producers had already begun looking at young white actors who fit this traditional mold when Fred Berry showed up to audition for the part, bringing with him a completely different energy and vision for what the character could become. Berry was already 25 years old when he auditioned for the role of a high school student, making him significantly older than the teenage character the writers had created. More importantly, his physical appearance and performance style were the exact opposite of what the producers had requested. Since Berry was a heavy-set African-American man with professional dance training and a commanding stage presence that filled any room he entered, despite the producers' initial resistance to his unconventional interpretation of the character, Berry's audition was so memorable and entertaining that it forced them to completely reconsider their original vision. His natural comedic timing, combined with his incredible dancing abilities and genuine charisma, convinced the casting directors that he could bring something special to the role that no skinny white actor could possibly deliver. The producers' objections were eventually overruled, and Berry won the part that would define his entire career. His casting completely transformed the character from a generic sidekick into the show's breakout star, with his "hey, hey, hey" catchphrase and signature dance moves becoming some of the most memorable elements of the entire series. The decision to cast Berry, despite the producer's original vision, proved that sometimes the best creative choices come from completely abandoning your initial plans. Fact 5. Danielle Spencer survived a deadly car crash during filming. The second season of What's Happening was nearly derailed by a tragic accident that almost cost the life of 11-year-old Danielle Spencer, who played the sassy younger sister Dee Thomas, and did claim the life of the man she considered her father. On September 6, 1977, during the production of the second season episode Trial and Error, Spencer and her stepfather, Tim Pelt, were driving to the set when their car was involved in a devastating crash that would change both their lives forever. Spencer had been born to writer Cheryl Pelt, who had separated from her husband when Danielle was very young, and Tim Pelt had become the only father figure the young actress had ever known. The family had relocated to Los Angeles specifically to support Danielle's acting career, and Tim Pelt regularly drove her to and from the studio where What's Happening was filmed, making the trip to the set a routine part of their daily lives. The accident was so severe that Tim Pelt died instantly from his injuries, which were made worse by his instinctive attempt to shield Danielle from the impact during the crash. Spencer herself suffered multiple serious injuries, including a broken arm, broken leg, and fractured pelvis, along with facial injuries that required special makeup and hairstyling to conceal when she eventually returned to filming. The young actress remained in a coma for 3 weeks, during which time the entire cast and crew of What's Happening waited anxiously to learn whether she would survive and be able to continue with the show. The production schedule had to be completely reorganized around her absence, with writers scrambling to adjust storylines and other cast members taking on larger roles to fill the gap left by her character. Spencer's recovery was nothing short of miraculous, and she was able to return to the set in time to complete filming for the rest of the second season. The show's makeup artists worked carefully to hide her facial injuries, and she even received a special hairdo designed to cover up the visible signs of the trauma she had endured, allowing her to continue playing Dee without viewers knowing about the tragedy that had nearly ended her career. Fact 6. The Doobie Brothers episode was masterminded by Liza Minnelli's future ex-husband. The most famous episodes in What's Happening history, the two-part Doobie or Not Doobie storyline where Rerun bootlegs a Doobie Brothers concert, came about through the unlikely involvement of David Guest, a music publicist who would later become famous for his brief and tumultuous marriage to legendary entertainer Liza Minnelli. Patrick Simmons, the founding member of the Doobie Brothers, revealed this surprising connection decades later when discussing how the band ended up appearing on the sitcom. At the time of the episode's filming in 1978, David Guest was working as the Doobie Brothers' publicist and was constantly looking for creative ways to get the band more television exposure and connect them with new audiences. Guest had a reputation in the music industry for coming up with unconventional promotional ideas that other publicists wouldn't consider, and he saw an opportunity to place his clients on a popular family sitcom that would introduce their music to younger viewers. The two-part episode that resulted from Guest's planning became one of the most memorable storylines in the show's entire run, featuring the band performing multiple songs including Black Water, Taking It to the Streets, and Take Me in Your Arms, while teaching Rerun and his friends about the moral problems with illegally recording concerts. The episodes were so popular that they inspired their own Facebook page decades later, titled That Episode of What's Happening, where Rerun bootlegs the Doobie Brothers. David Guest would go on to have a fascinating career in entertainment, working as a television producer and eventually marrying Liza Minnelli in 2002 in a ceremony that featured Michael Jackson as best man and Elizabeth Taylor as maid of honor. Their marriage lasted only 16 months and was filled with public drama and legal battles, making Guest a tabloid fixture long after his work with the Doobie Brothers. The irony that this beloved piece of television history was orchestrated by someone who would later become better known for celebrity gossip than music promotion adds an unexpected layer to what many fans consider the greatest Guest appearance in What's Happening history. Fact 7. Fred Berry was a professional dancer before acting. Before Fred Berry ever stepped foot on a television set, he was already making a name for himself as a groundbreaking professional dancer, who helped create an entirely new style of street dance that would influence performers for generations to come. Barry was a founding member of the Lockers, a revolutionary Los Angeles-based dance troupe that pioneered the locking style of street dance and brought urban dance moves into mainstream American entertainment during the early 1970s. The Lockers were formed in 1971 by choreographer Tony Basil and dancer Don Campbellock. Campbell, who had invented the distinctive locking dance style that combined sharp, robotic movements with smooth, flowing sequences. Barry joined the group early in their development and quickly became one of their most recognizable performers, earning the nickname Mr. Penguin for his unique style that incorporated his larger frame into the precise, rhythmic movements that defined locking. The dance troupe gained national attention through their appearances on popular television variety shows, with their most famous early appearance coming on the third episode of Saturday Night Live in 1975, just months before Barry would audition for What's Happening. Their performance on the brand-new sketch comedy show helped introduce locking to audiences across the country and establish the Lockers as serious entertainers rather than just novelty street performers. Barry also showcased his talents on Soul Train, the influential music and dance television program, where he was featured in the show's signature line dance segment performing the slow-mo, a memorable dance step that became one of his trademark moves. His appearances on Soul Train helped cement his reputation as one of the most skilled and creative dancers of his generation, with his smooth movements and natural charisma making him a standout performer even among the Lockers' talented roster. The professional dance training and performance experience that Barry gained with the Lockers proved invaluable when he transitioned to acting, giving him the confidence and stage presence that would make Rerun such a memorable character. His ability to incorporate authentic dance moves into his television performances wasn't just acting, it was the result of years of professional training and live performance experience. Fact 8. The Lockers appeared as the Rockets in a meta-episode. One of the most surreal moments in What's Happening. History occurred when Fred Barry's real-life former dance troupe appeared on the show as a fictional group, creating a bizarre situation where Barry was essentially auditioning to rejoin his own professional colleagues while pretending they were strangers. In the first season episode titled My 3 Tons, the Lockers dance troupe appeared under the fictional name The Rockets, setting up a storyline where Rerun desperately wants to join their group. The episode created an unusual behind-the-scenes dynamic because Barry had been a founding member of the Lockers before leaving the group to pursue his acting career on What's Happening. When the show's writers decided to create a storyline about Rerun auditioning for a dance group, they reached out to Barry's former colleagues and asked them to appear as guest stars, essentially reuniting the original members for a television performance. What made the situation even more interesting was that the episode's plot revolved around Rerun being accepted into the Rockets. Not because of his dancing ability, but because the other dancers wanted to use his larger size as a comedic contrast to their own athletic builds. This created an awkward meta-commentary where Barry's real-life former dance partners were essentially playing characters who were making fun of his weight, even though they all knew he was actually a skilled professional dancer who belonged on their level. The Lockers had to perform as the Rockets, while pretending not to know Barry personally, despite having spent years touring and performing together as one of the most innovative dance troupes in Los Angeles. They had to act as if they were meeting Rerun for the first time and evaluating his dance skills, when in reality they had helped train him and develop the very moves he was performing during his fictional audition. The episode became one of the most memorable installments of the first season, partly because viewers could sense the genuine chemistry and friendship between Barry and his former dance partners, even though the script required them to maintain the illusion that they were meeting for the first time and judging each other as strangers. Fact 9. Gary Coleman was almost cast instead of David Hollander. The character of Little Earl Barnett on What's Happening was originally designed specifically for Gary Coleman. The future star of Different Strokes and television history might have been completely different if ABC president Fred Silverman had gotten his way during the show's third season casting process. Silverman had spotted Coleman's incredible talent in a series of failed pilot episodes for a Norman Lear sitcom that was attempting to reboot The Little Rascals, and he was determined to find the young performer a starring role on television. Coleman was only 10 years old at the time, but his natural comedic timing and distinctive personality had already caught the attention of network executives who recognized that he had genuine star potential. Silverman was so impressed with Coleman's screen presence that he personally contacted Saul Turteltaub, the executive producer of What's Happening, and strongly suggested that the show create a new character specifically designed to showcase Coleman's talents. The role that Silverman envisioned would have made Coleman a regular cast member as the son of Big Earl Barnett, the white police detective who lived in the same apartment building as Roger and Rerun during the show's third season. This character would have given Coleman a prominent recurring role that could have served as a launching pad for his television career, potentially changing the entire trajectory of both What's Happening and Coleman's future success. However, Turteltaub was hesitant to add Coleman to the cast because the show already featured Danielle Spencer as Dee Thomas, and he felt that having two child actors might upset the show's established dynamic between the three main teenage characters. The producer was also concerned about the logistics of working with such a young performer, and worried that Coleman's presence might shift too much focus away from the core friendship between Roger, Rerun, and Dwayne. When Silverman left ABC in 1978 to become the head of rival network NBC, he took his plans for Coleman with him and created Different Strokes, specifically as a vehicle for the young actor. David Hollander was eventually cast as Little Earl instead, and Coleman went on to become one of the biggest child stars of the 1980s. Fact 10. Two stars died within a month of each other. The fall of 1999 brought heartbreaking news for What's Happening fans when two of the show's most beloved stars passed away within just 1 month of each other, creating a tragic coincidence that shocked their former colleagues and devastated viewers who had grown up watching their performances. The first loss came on November 9, 1999, when Mabel King, who played the stern but loving mother Mabel "Mama" Thomas, died at the age of 66 from complications related to diabetes. King had been battling health problems for several years before her death, but her passing still came as a surprise to many fans who remembered her powerful stage presence and commanding performance as the family matriarch who kept Roger and Dee in line throughout the show's run. Before joining What's Happening, King had been a respected Broadway performer who earned a Drama Desk Award nomination for playing the Wicked Witch of the West in the original production of The Wiz, making her loss felt deeply throughout the entertainment community. Just 1 month later, on December 10, 1999, Shirley Hemphill, the wise-cracking waitress who played Shirley Wilson at Rob's Place, was found dead at her home in West Covina, California, at the age of 52. Hemphill had died from kidney failure, and her body was discovered by a gardener who looked through a window and saw her lying on her bedroom floor, indicating that she had been alone when she passed away. The timing of these two deaths created an eerie connection between the actresses who had played two of the most important female characters on What's Happening. And many fans noticed the strange coincidence that both women had died from kidney-related health problems. Hemphill's death was particularly shocking because she had been relatively young and had recently returned to stand-up comedy after the cancellation of What's Happening Now, the sequel series that had brought her back to television in the mid-1980s. The loss of both King and Hemphill within such a short time period marked the end of an era for What's Happening, and left Ernest Thomas, Haywood Nelson, Danielle Spencer, and the surviving cast members as the keepers of the show's legacy during a time when the series was experiencing renewed popularity through syndicated reruns. Fact 11. The opening credits featured a major continuity error. Eagle-eyed viewers of What's Happening can spot one of television's most glaring continuity errors right in the opening credits of every single episode, where the very first shot completely contradicts a major plot point that drives countless storylines throughout the series. The opening sequence shows Roger Raj Thomas walking out of his family's house with two cars clearly visible parked in the driveway behind him, despite the fact that the Thomas family's lack of transportation is mentioned repeatedly as a significant part of their working-class struggles. Throughout the entire three-season run of the show, the writers made it abundantly clear that neither Raj nor his mother Mama owned a car, using this detail as the foundation for numerous episodes and character interactions. Mama Thomas is frequently shown having to take the bus to her job as a maid, often complaining about the inconvenience and unreliability of public transportation. While these scenes are specifically designed to highlight the family's modest economic circumstances, similarly, Raj's lack of access to a car becomes a running theme that affects his social life and independence as a teenager, forcing him to constantly ask friends for rides, walk long distances, or rely on public transportation to get anywhere beyond his immediate neighborhood. Many episodes begin with Raj trying to figure out how to get to various destinations, and his transportation problems often serve as the catalyst for the adventures and mishaps that drive the show's comedy. The presence of two cars in the opening credits becomes even more puzzling when you consider that the sequence was filmed specifically for the show and not taken from random stock footage, meaning that someone involved in the production should have noticed this major inconsistency with the established storyline. The cars appear to be parked as if they belong to the Thomas family, sitting directly in what is clearly meant to be their driveway at their residence. This continuity error has puzzled fans for decades, with some speculating that the opening credits were filmed before the writers had fully developed the family's economic background, while others suggest that the cars might have belonged to neighbors or been used by the production crew during filming, without anyone realizing how they would contradict the show's established premise. Fact 12. Cast walkouts left one actor to carry entire episodes. The second season of What's Happening was nearly derailed when labor disputes between the cast and producers reached such a boiling point that two of the three main stars simply refused to show up for work, leaving Haywood Nelson to single-handedly carry an entire episode while the behind-the-scenes drama played out in real time. Fred Berry had been using the show's first season success as leverage to demand higher salaries and better studio accommodations for all the actors, but when negotiations broke down during the filming of the episode If I'm Elected, both Berry and Ernest Thomas staged a dramatic walkout. The walkout created an unprecedented crisis for the production team, who suddenly found themselves with a half-finished episode and no way to complete the planned storylines that revolved around the friendship between Roger, Rerun, and Dwayne. Rather than shut down production entirely and lose money on the episode, the writers and producers made the extraordinary decision to completely rewrite the script around Haywood Nelson's character Dwayne, transforming what had been designed as an ensemble comedy into a one-man showcase. Nelson, who played the quiet and often overlooked third member of the friend group, suddenly found himself thrust into the spotlight as the sole focus of an entire episode, with Shirley Hemphill stepping into a much more prominent role to help fill the gap left by the missing stars. The episode also featured expanded parts for supporting characters like Brian O'Dell and Debbie Morgan, as the writers scrambled to create enough material to fill the standard 24-minute runtime without Roger and Rerun. The situation was resolved relatively quickly when producer Bud Yorkin took a hard line with the striking actors, suspending both Berry and Thomas and forcing them to sign $25,000 promissory notes as a guarantee against future walkouts before they would be allowed to return to the show. This financial penalty was designed to make any future labor disputes extremely expensive for the actors, essentially forcing them to think twice before staging another protest. The episode that resulted from this chaos became an unintentional showcase for Nelson's acting abilities, proving that he could handle more substantial material than the writers had previously given him and demonstrating the supporting cast's ability to step up when needed. Fact 13. The show's creator, Eric Monte, sued for $1 million. Eric Monti, the creative force behind What's Happening, became embroiled in one of Hollywood's most significant legal battles over creative ownership when he filed a massive lawsuit in 1977 claiming that powerful television producers had systematically stolen his ideas and profited from his work without giving him proper credit or compensation. According to reports in the Los Angeles Times, Monti accused CBS, Tandem Productions, and legendary producers Norman Lear and Jerry Perenchio of stealing his creative concepts for three major television series: Good Times, The Jeffersons, and What's Happening. Monti's lawsuit centered on his claim that he had developed the core ideas and characters for these groundbreaking African-American sitcoms, but that the white producers had gradually pushed him out of the creative process while continuing to use his original concepts to generate millions of dollars in profits. The case was particularly complex because Monti had indeed worked as a writer and co-creator on Good Times and had written the screenplay for Cooley High, which served as the inspiration for What's Happening, but he argued that his contributions had been systematically minimized and his ownership rights had been violated. The legal battle highlighted the broader issue of how African-American creators were treated in Hollywood during the 1970s, with Monti arguing that the entertainment industry had a pattern of exploiting black writers and creators while giving primary credit and financial rewards to white producers and executives. His case drew attention to the power dynamics that existed between creators and the major studios that controlled television production and distribution. After a lengthy legal process, Monti eventually reached a settlement with the defendants that reportedly netted him $1 million and a small percentage of the residual payments from Good Times, though the exact terms of the agreement were kept confidential. However, the victory came at a significant personal and professional cost, as Monti later claimed that his willingness to sue major Hollywood figures essentially blacklisted him from the industry and dried up his opportunities to pitch new television projects. The lawsuit's aftermath demonstrated the risks that creators faced when challenging the established power structure in Hollywood, even when they had legitimate claims about their creative contributions and ownership rights. Fact 14. Henry Mancini composed the theme song. The catchy, upbeat theme song that introduced viewers to What's Happening every week was composed by Henry Mancini, one of the most celebrated and accomplished composers in entertainment history, whose involvement with the sitcom represents just a tiny fraction of his legendary career that included iconic film scores and some of the most recognizable music ever written for movies and television. Mancini was already a household name by the time he wrote the What's Happening theme in 1977, having won multiple Academy Awards and Grammy Awards for his work on films like Breakfast at Tiffany's and the Pink Panther series. The composer's decision to work on What's Happening was part of his broader involvement in television music during the 1970s, when he was simultaneously creating themes for multiple series and establishing himself as one of the most prolific and versatile composers working in the medium. Mancini had a particular talent for creating memorable television themes that could instantly establish the mood and tone of a show, and his work on What's Happening demonstrated his ability to adapt his sophisticated musical style to fit the energy and spirit of a youth-oriented sitcom. The What's Happening theme featured Mancini's signature blend of jazz-influenced arrangements and catchy melodies, with a prominent saxophone line that gave the song its distinctive sound and helped establish the urban, contemporary feel that the show's creators wanted to achieve. Mancini released his own recorded version of the theme song on his 1977 album, Mancini's Angels, making it one of the few television themes that the composer felt was strong enough to stand alone as a piece of instrumental music. During the same period when he was working on What's Happening, Mancini was also composing themes for other television series, including Mr. Lucky, NBC Mystery Movie, and later Newhart, Hotel, Remington Steele, and Ripley's Believe It or Not, making the 1980s one of his most productive decades for television work. His involvement with What's Happening connected the groundbreaking African-American sitcom to one of Hollywood's most respected musical artists, giving the show an unexpectedly prestigious musical pedigree that most viewers probably never realized they were hearing. Fact 15. It was the first revival series to bring back the original cast. What's Happening? Broke new ground in television history when it became the very first primetime series to be successfully revived with its original cast members after being cancelled, establishing a precedent that would eventually inspire countless other shows to attempt similar comebacks decades later. When What's Happening Now premiered in first-run syndication on September 7, 1985, it marked a revolutionary moment in television programming that had never been attempted before on such a scale. The original What's Happening had ended its run on ABC in April of 1979 after 3 seasons, but the show had found unexpected new life in syndicated reruns that were broadcast on local stations across the country throughout the early 1980s. These reruns proved to be incredibly popular with both children and adults, often earning higher ratings than the show had achieved during its original network broadcast, which convinced producers that there was still a significant audience hungry for new episodes featuring the same beloved characters. The revival series brought back Ernest Thomas as Roger, Haywood Nelson as Dwayne, Shirley Hemphill as Shirley, and Danielle Spencer as Dee, though Fred Berry initially appeared only as a guest star before joining the regular cast later in the first season. The show picked up the characters' lives several years after the original series had ended, with Roger now married and the friends dealing with adult responsibilities while maintaining their close relationships. What's Happening Now ran for 3 seasons and 66 episodes, proving that the revival concept could work both creatively and commercially, and its success directly inspired a wave of similar syndicated series revivals throughout the late 1980s. Shows like The New Leave It to Beaver, The Munsters Today, and continuation series like Mama's Family and Charles in Charge all followed the template that What's Happening Now had established. This pioneering approach to television revivals created a blueprint that modern streaming services and networks still follow today, with recent successes like Arrested Development, Fuller House, and the various Star Trek revival series all owing a debt to the groundbreaking experiment that brought Roger, Rerun, and Dwayne back to television screens 6 years after their original adventures had ended.